Welcome, everybody, to another live recording of the Business Travel 360 Linking the Travel Industry podcast, where we discuss travel industry news you are talking about on LinkedIn. My name is Rian, and I'm one of your hosts today. I'm a co-founder at Agentivity, a travel data platform with a vision to enable travel sellers and buyers to be truly data-driven businesses. So if that sounds of interest to you, please get in touch. As usual, I'm joined by Anne and Ash. Over to you, Anne.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anne. I'm an independent consultant with LeapShift. I'm happy to help you with anything related to distribution, airline retailing, NDC, one order, etc. Over to you, Ash.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ash, and I'm the host of a weekly business travel podcast called What's Up in Business Travel, where we give you the important updates in under 15 minutes. Additionally, I'm the vice president at Traxo, and this is Linking the Travel Industry.
If you are new to this event, the format here is purely a discussion of the most talked about travel industry stories from last week on LinkedIn. Let's get on with the stories of the week. Of course, the big story from last week was the London Heathrow shutdown, which happened on Friday as a result of a fire at a nearby electrical substation. They made a decision in the early hours of Friday morning to shut the airport down for a total of 18 hours in order to get themselves prepared for a restart of supply of electricity. And it meant a major disruption. Heathrow is Europe's busiest airport, handles 1,300 flights a day, and at least 200, if not more, 200,000 passengers were affected. Lots of stories about this in the news, lots of messaging about, should this have happened? Wasn't there a backup plan, etc. Very critical messages coming out of the industry. For instance, Willie Walsh at IATA was saying, very bad things about how this was not handled well. The opposite side of that, the CEO of Heathrow Airport saying they did a great job. He's very proud of his team and how they handled this. Possibly two sides of the coin there. I definitely stand on the side of I can't believe that there's a single point of failure like this for an airport as critical as Heathrow. Lots of theories as well, that I've seen on several channels about why they didn't have a proper backup system and chose this biomass generator as a sort of complementary system and etc. But I just find it astonishing. And today in the news on BBC, we saw the head of the National Grid, which is the sort of energy body in the UK, saying that they definitely had sufficient power and power from alternative substations for sure. They could have kept going, but the response from Heathrow to that was that they didn't have enough time and a plan to safely switch over to those substations, etc. But yes, it just adds fuel to the argument that this cannot be accepted as just the way to deal with this, to shut down and wait for a fix. And where do you stand on the story?
With you. And doesn't this remind us of that cable at Frankfurt?
Absolutely. And somebody pointed out, wasn't there a electrical issue at Gatwick last year as well, which had a similar issue?
Yeah, I can't believe it either. I mean, I always say there's got to be a plan A and a plan B, and there's got to be a scenario for this. I was very surprised.
Ash, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the social media was filled with videos of people that were on planes that showed the pilot announcements and things like that they were dealing with. And the timing of it was that a lot of the East Coast flights from the US were making its way into Heathrow that morning. You have that combination kicking in, right? So it's kind of like the worst time for arrivals into Heathrow, I think, at least from the US market. It makes me kind of wonder that, do you really have to have a plan to deal with a crisis? Yes, you could have plan B, C, D, E, and you can kind of think of things, but there's always going to be something in aviation that you didn't expect and think of. So where are all the decision makers who get paid big bucks to make decisions and look at alternatives? Why did flights have to be returned? Why couldn't they land at secondary, tertiary airports or get them in the vicinity of? I mean, if I was going to London, I would rather get to Paris, for example, than to arrive back at JFK.
Yeah, I think there was somebody who asked that questions talking about there was a recent reinvestment at Heathrow, and those investors also should have been asking these questions and said, present us these plans and those kind of things as well. And I fully agree with you there, Ash. It's just astonishing. Nobody asked the question, what happens if the power is cut?
It's interesting because, there are plenty of airports in the UK.
Let's move on. Following up from, if you recall, last week we talked about a post by Rafat Ali, we were just talking about a global slowdown coming, etc. I spotted this post, and he was showing that there were the year-on-year change for the month of February had some significant negative percentages there, and it was just supporting in that same story about a potential slowdown in the spend in travel. Ash, can I come to you on this? What do you make of this?
Yeah, it's a bunch of BS. I'm sorry. Every once in a while you could have some red lines that are shown here. The numbers are too small. When you're talking about year-over-year change, you're talking about 2024. 2024 was definitely a year where travel was at its peak. People were doing the return of travel at that time as well. From the pandemic, there was a lot of travel going on. Planes were full. I mean, they're still full, but they were a lot more full back then. So the difference in 2%, 3%, yeah, you could kind of create this graphic of red lines and it looks kind of alarming. We're just in a period where we're comparing ourselves against a peak time. So you had highs of highs.
So at what point does it become alarming? If March, April, May?
With the changes that are happening in business right now, a lot of businesses are looking at their costs. They're looking at personnel. Definitely the United States government is looking at their costs and personnel. So will you have some slowdowns? Yes. We've enjoyed a high of highs for a few years now. Travel should not always keep climbing all the time. That's not reality. And supply and demand has a role in that. Mergers and acquisitions have a role in that. People being let go in the federal government has a role in that. So these are all part of that story. But 2 to 3% is not something to be alarmed about.
And what do you think?
This actually looks exactly when I sign in and check on my savings. It's just red across the board. It's what the world needs is stability. And it's definitely the economy needs stability. And travel is no exception to that. It needs, and stability means growth.
Another intermodal partner is joining the Star Alliance, and that being the Austrian rail operator OBB. Great news there for Star Alliance. It's very nice to see this, right? And we like this sort of stuff.
Yes, we do. We like interoperability very much. The only question that I had in the article, it's pretty easy to integrate both OBB and Deutsche Bahn and SBB, etc., because, they don't require a seat reservation. It gets way more difficult, of course, to integrate when you have to have an interactive cell. So I wish they could explain a bit more in the article what technology you're using to integrate this. And
good gosh, Anne, you're expecting details in a press release? Come on.
I am, because we talk way too little about it, these type of integrations. But it's pretty straightforward for OBB as it is for Deutsche Bahn. And it's good. It's great.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, Asha, you ready to book your OBB ticket?
By the way, they do provide details. It says it includes integrated ticketing and check-in services.
There we go.
So,
and a website, probably.
Yes, yeah, but ticketing, yes, a ticket, yes. But I'm saying that I wish they could explain how.
That's not detailed. Yeah. Come on.
The most important part of this article is that I get points as a traveler.
There we go.
And that's ready. All that matters. Everything else is secondary to that conversation. So this is really, really good. I think the Alliance here, Star Alliance, and we talked about this before, they're actually doing something. We've seen so much activity from the Star Alliance on this front over the last couple of years. It's great. I wish One World would do something like this. But then, of course, One World has Amtrak, and they don't have anything else on the other side.
Well, they have a British Airways website. It's not bad.
Yeah. I'm really disappointed that One World is not doing anything like that.
Astonishingly, we have 3 major stories out of Africa, so we're just going to focus on that for a bit. But before we do, let's just see why are we so interested and excited about Africa travel news. And if you are joining us today on a medium where you can see the screen, I'm showing some statistics there, but for those who are just listening to the podcast afterwards, let me just tell you why. 5 key reasons that, it has the world's largest growing population. Its annual population growth rate is 2.7%. That was actually late 2018, 2019. It has increased since then. And as we know, there are places in Europe where the population growth is actually in decline. So it has a phenomenal population growth rate. The most amazing statistic for me is the age of the population in Africa. So 50% of the population is under 20. Just let that sink in. And in fact, 60% is under 25. This is phenomenal. And there are 1.3 billion, with a B, people living in Africa. So it is a place to keep your eye on and take note. These numbers should speak for themselves. So first Africa news story of the week comes out of Uganda. News that Uganda Airlines are starting to fly between Entebbe Airport and London. I believe they're going to fly to Gatwick 4 times a week from the 18th of May. Really nice story there. I did find the announcement to be a bit light, not much detail. I had to go and look which airport in London they're going to fly to. They just said London, but I guess, they are happy about flying to London. And this is really nice, right, to see this African carrier doing 4 times a week to Gatwick.
Well, you know that I'm just as passionate as you are about this continent and the growth and the potential. And it also just makes me very happy. And I would love to try them out.
On with the African travel stories. Next story comes out of 2 ways to pronounce this country, Tanzania or Tanzania. It depends on where you're from. There is news here that there's going to be a huge conference center being built near Arusha. It's a facility that houses a 5,000-seat auditorium and a 500-room 5-star hotel. So huge conference, facility development right there at the foot of Kilimanjaro. Absolutely phenomenal development.
You probably don't know this, but Arusha is on my top 10 list of places I want to go to.
Oh, I can tell you I've been. It's very, very nice. It is a really good place to go to. Yes, and there's some of the world's most phenomenal people, are in Tanzania. It's just a magical place to go to. I've said this a few times before, but, if I could, I would go and live there tomorrow. It's a phenomenal country.
I hope it's a Hyatt hotel they're building.
There's definitely a Hyatt hotel there. She should not have to worry about it at all. Don't worry. Okay, and our third Africa story comes out of Ethiopia. The news that Africa's biggest airport will be built in Ethiopia, and they hope to have capacity of 60 million passengers by 2040, which is not far away. Estimated cost there is almost $8 billion. Huge, airport that's being built there. So really good news, out of Africa. Ash, what are your thoughts on these stories? Should we have a Africa section if we have enough news?
I mean, we should, based on everything you just talked about. It's quite remarkable. So I actually met a Uganda Airlines pilot, a guy named Isaac, and we were talking about the growth of his airline. He had been there for a while. He's a captain. And he was talking about how they were looking to grow their network into the American market. So we see this growth not just towards London, but towards the U.S. market as well. And so that was some insider information I gotten over a few drinks. He wasn't drinking. I was, because he had a flight the next day.
But there's things you can learn in a Hyatt lounge, right? It's just astonishing.
I'm telling you, this is something there.
I was recently at a conference in Kigali. The industry there is so frustrated because they can do so much better if they had a single African travel market as well. If they can abolish, into Africa costs for airlines to fly between countries and reduce that cost, because then the opportunity for them to, for instance, Uganda Airlines to just simply hire staff from any other country and that sort of thing will lead to even bigger growth. So the opportunity is immense. And so you can imagine, if you can increase that current earnings even more, what will happen in that. That was our Africa news, and that was the list of stories, that I had. We have a section about anything else, any extra stories. I don't have an extra story, but I have a quiz. I don't know if you want to do that now, Ash, or do you want to do your extra stories first?
Let's do your quiz. I'm ready.
So
ready for your quiz.
Simple question. I think Anne might get this one. Which airline celebrated 80 years this month?
There's so many, yeah.
Okay, it's a European airline.
Austrian.
No.
Can it be British Airways? No.
No, it's TAP Air Portugal.
No. Oh, Air Portugal. Okay.
And how come you didn't know that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm ashamed.
And a follow-up from a question you had 3 weeks ago, Ash, was we talked about Comac, the Chinese airline, potentially receiving certification in another country, and you said possibly China. Actually, that country is Vietnam. Vietnam is seriously considering certifying the Comac flying domestically within the country and also obviously to and from the country. So just out of interest to keep... Okay, cool. Any extra stories from your side, Anne?
Yes, I thought it was pretty interesting. Something that caught my attention was that Malaysia Airlines, they're offering their Malaysian upgrade directly on trip.com. That's the first time they're doing that with a third party. Trip.com, I believe they're Chinese out of Shanghai, right? And I thought that was pretty interesting.
So you could do the Malaysian Airlines upgrade on an OTA site.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the first third party that they're working together with for this. I mean, otherwise, of course, you can do it on their website. But I thought that was pretty interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Face News.
One of the biggest things that ever in the history of mankind happened this past week, which is that we had 2 astronauts take a Boeing, the International Space Station, and SpaceX back home. So Sunita and Butch are back on planet Earth after 8 months of being stuck in the International Space Station. Perfect landing, perfect day. Everything was great. I was glued to my screen to get every piece of the action I could. The beautiful thing about the landing, I don't know if you caught this, but they had a whole school of dolphins swimming around the shuttle when it was in the bay.
You will like this one, Ash. The landing was so perfect. The conditions were so perfect. The graphics were so intense. The dolphins were so amazing that, of course, a lot of people were saying it's fake. Can you believe that? So, yes.
Whatever. Yes. Maybe them going to the space shuttle was also fake as well.
That's what they said.
It was quite an incredible scene. It was quite an incredible scene.
Yeah, no, it looked amazing.
It was magical. So anyway, that was really, really great. And then my second story, real quick, is that Spirit, our friends at Spirit are now planning on premium focus. We talked about it on the show so many times, Anne, that the only way Spirit can recover is to focus on premium. They have just announced that now they're out of bankruptcy. That's what they're going to focus on. And this is supposed to generate 13% more revenue per passenger because they're going to have these go big seats and go big fares for more leg room and all that kind of stuff in front of the plane.
Appreciate it. So, guys, I think we're a little bit over time. JP and Phil, thank you for telling us where you're listening from. It's nice to have such a global audience, so thank you for that. I do think that rounds things up. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Really appreciate it. We do this weekly, as Ash will remind us at the end. Thank you so much, Ash and Anne. Over to you, Anne.
Thanks, everyone. Especially love your comments. Over to you, Ash.
Thank you all for joining today's live recording of Linking the Travel Industry. We record this podcast live every week on Monday. We ask that you share this event with others that you know. Chances are high that if you enjoyed today's session, others that you know will as well. If you miss a show because of time zone availability, we make the podcast available on businesstravel360.com. This is Linking the Travel Industry, signing off.